I don't know if you've seen it. You're going to have a lot to say, Nick, if you have not.
I haven't seen more than a clip.
Okay, so you've probably seen the most watched part when you're
I haven't seen this one. This is yesterday. Oh, you about to see some crazy ass shit, bro. Antony Blinken, every propaganda report we did with this guy, he has said the most unhinged pro-war shit on Taiwan, Ukraine, Israel. And Antony Blinken is one of the reasons why I looked at people who voted for Joe Biden with absolute disgust. Because who was Joe Biden's foreign policy advisor during the campaign? Antony Blinken. So you have motherfuckers like, I don't think Joe Biden's gonna be as bad as he used to be. He got the same guy that helped him manufacture the Iraq war on his thing. And you had dumb progressives like Vulture, like, I know you quoting things that Joe Biden used to do, but how he changed. Got the same swamp monsters around him. That's my pre-Facebook. Go ahead.
He changed, man. Okay. All right, let's listen. Just let me know when you want it to stop, to make a point or anything. Here we go.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is at the State Department. Good morning to you, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Margaret. Good to be with you.
Tension is very high in the region. Are you changing your security posture? Are you pulling any U.S. personnel out of the area?
Margaret, we are concerned at the possibility of Iranian proxies escalating their attacks against our own personnel, our own people. We're taking every measure to make sure that we can defend them and, if necessary, respond decisively. Not at all what we're looking for, not at all what we want, but we'll be prepared if that's what they choose to do.
So that sounds like quite possibly pulling people out. In terms of the threat from Iran.
Why are you answering this question for him?
Because she's part of the same apparatus. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
She's like, you didn't answer the question, but I think you say you're going to pull them out, right? You see how the mainstream media have to hold their fucking hands?
I want to rewind that part.
But listen to what you said.
We want, but we'll be prepared if that's what they choose to do.
So that sounds like quite possibly pulling people out. In terms of the threat from Iran you just referenced there, President Biden.
And he doesn't.
You see how she asked the question? She asked the question about Americans being pulled out, and then Antony Blinken said some State Department bullshit, and then she's like, "I think you said. I'm just guessing. I'm sure you answered the question that you get Americans out." Unbelievable.
In his Oval Office address, said that the U.S. would hold Iran accountable. What does accountable mean?
Well, what you've seen already, Margaret, is a very clear message from the president, backed up by the deployment of two of our largest aircraft carrier battle groups, to make sure that it's clear no one should take advantage of this moment to escalate to further attacks on Israel, or for that matter, attacks on us, on our personnel. And this is not by way of, in terms of what we're doing by provocation. It's designed to deter, designed to make clear that no one should use this moment in any way to escalate.
That's what they keep saying, deter.
A third front.
They keep using this word deter. This is what they use to justify U.S. aggression. Joe Biden stole $6 billion of Iranian funds, and then he negotiated to give it back, and people freaking out like, "You guys getting Iranian money?" I'm like, that's money he stole from them. Joe Biden is a fucking pirate. We got fucking Blackbeard as president right now. And I covered this. Remember that story I covered where U.S. seized Iranian funds? They seized their oil. And then they negotiated to return that to de-escalate. And then people are like, oh my God, it's just evidence that Joe Biden being weak on Iran. At what point do you guys expect Iran, Russia, China, or any other country to respond in a way that any other country will respond on the rank violations of sovereignty? Imagine the reaction of the United States if Iran visited the Gulf of Mexico and did some Blackbeard shit like Joe Biden did. Seizing boats and supplies and oil. That is what the United States does to Iran all the time. And then Iran shows amazing amount of restraint. Yeah, I said it. Who else is going to tell you that? You know how much the United States has fucked with Iran? Iran had every fucking reason to start a nuclear war to fuck shit up. But they're like, man, we can't. These niggas in the United States are fucking crazy. Just like China, these niggas are crazy. What can we do? What can we do to project strength? Because every government got to project strength to the people, right? But U.S. is just bitching everybody. Be like, man, we got to appear strong to our people. But at the same time, we got to be fucking reasonable and not start a global war. Because if it was up to, if Iran, Russia, and China, and this is my last talk, I didn't mean go on the rant. My last thought, if Iran, Russia, and China behave the same way that U.S. government officials, U.S. military officials, and generals behave, we would have been in a World War III, fam. China would have been launched a war and an invasion in Hawaii or whatever because of aggressions in Taiwan. You had Donald Trump, who launched a CIA attack, an infrastructural cyber attack on Russia. You know, the president that people said was working for Putin, he launched a cyber attack into their financial institutions. Nigga, do you imagine if Putin launched a financial attack on Wall Street? How fast we would be in war? So the moral of the story that is always Iran, China, and Russia. That has to be the grown-ups at the table. Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, that has to be the grown-up at the table. And one of these fucking days, CJ and fam, they're not. They're not going to be. One of these days they're going to say, fuck it, like Hamas did. Fuck it. Let's just go to war. How long that till it take? That's why we got to speak out against it. But go ahead, CJ. It's just absurd what this guy is saying. I'll let it finish here. There's so much to respond to.
I'm gonna share a different version of this because I thought it was my headset, but I heard some sort of weird. No, I have another version of this, so I have it on the regular TV.
Maybe you can reload it.
Yeah, it could have been my ear set, but just to be safe, I'm gonna just play it from this other outlet here. This is just regular TV. I'm gonna play it from. So let's listen here.
Margaret, is a very clear message from the president, backed up by the deployment of two of our largest aircraft carrier battle groups, to make sure that it's clear no one should take advantage of this moment to escalate to further attacks on Israel, or for that matter, attacks on us, on our personnel. And this is not by way of, in terms of what we're doing by provocation. It's designed to deter, designed to make clear that no one should use this moment in any way to escalate.
We'll stay tuned. In terms of what's happening in Gaza, I know there are an estimated 500 to 600 Americans there. Is there any chance Israel lets some of those Americans out, or Egypt allows some of those Americans in?
You're exactly right. And to date, at least, Hamas has blocked them from leaving, showing once again its total disregard for civilians of any kind. Who are
Jesus Christ.
How come I never, you know? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, CJ. Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead, CJ.
No, I was just going to say, I've never, if Hamas is doing, how come I've never seen Hamas? Maybe I have.
Yeah, what I was about to say is
none of the stuff they're talking about. Go ahead.
Israel can completely control the sovereignty of Gaza. And then they pretend on their media channel that Hamas is controlling shit. One of the reasons why this war is happening, one of the reasons why Hamas is fighting back, is because Israel completely controls the sovereignty of Gaza. So this claim that Hamas is blocking people from leaving is not true. But look at the framing of the question. I say this real quick before you continue.
Yeah, no
Is
problem.
there a way? Is there a way possible that we can get those people out? No, the framing of this answer, we actually wasn't bootlickers to the Israeli state. If you wasn't owned by AIPAC, is what are you doing as a United States official to guarantee the safety of Americans? What are you demanding Israel? What are you demanding at the threat of withholding aid? You know, is that not the question? You can go back to the question if you want to. She's like, is there a way we can get them out? Is there any possibility? It's like, no, you're the Secretary of State, fam. You go to Israel and say, you motherfuckers create a ceasefire right now, and we're getting the Americans out. I don't give a fuck how mad you guys are. We doing a ceasefire until we get the Americans out. And that's not even that's not even the left position, right, CJ? I'm talking about from if you actually gave a fuck position, you know what I mean? But go ahead, CJ.
Deter, designed to make clear that no one should use this moment in any way to escalate.
We'll stay tuned. In terms of what's happening in Gaza, I know there are an estimated 500 to 600 Americans there. Is there any chance Israel lets some of those Americans out, or Egypt allows some of those Americans in?
You're exactly right. And to date, at least, Hamas has blocked them from leaving, showing once again its total disregard for civilians of any kind who are stuck in Gaza.
Have you asked the Israeli government to delay in order to give you more time to broker the release of these hostages?
First, step back for a second, because it's important to remember what happened. It's incredible how quickly that gets lost, because it was only a couple of weeks ago that Hamas invaded Israel, with its terrorist fighters and slaughtered.
I just got to point out for 10 seconds, using the word invade, just to hear Hamas invaded Israel. That's just weird when you're in absurd. Palestine. That's just weird to hear that. So let's get back. I don't want to prolong it too long. Let's go back.
And I use that word very deliberately, slaughtered so many people. Again, right. Men,
compared
women,
to you,
young
who
children,
gently
babies,
kills people.
Old people.
I just nudge people to death.
Hamas slaughters people. Israel just gently place a bomb on the baby's head. You know what I mean? He almost whispers sweet nothings into their ear as they shot a bullet in their head. Like, we got to see the propaganda language they use, but let's continue.
Yes.
People, you name it. And they continue to rain rockets down on Israel. When I was there a few days ago, we had to take shelter a couple of times because of incoming rockets from Hamas. So my point is this: no country can be expected to tolerate this, to live with this. And as we said from the start, Israel has both the right and even the obligation, not only to defend itself, but to try to make sure that, to the best of its ability, this can't happen again. So we talk to the Israelis about what they're planning. We give them our best advice. It's important, as we've said, not only what they do, but how they do it, particularly when it comes to making sure that civilians are as protected as they possibly can be in this crossfire of Hamas is making. But in terms of what we're talking to Israel about with regard to their military operations, it really is focused on both how they do it and how best to achieve the results that they seek.
So he didn't answer the question. She's going to push back now, because that's not at all the question. She asked, have you... Now, that was his answer to saving Americans. Because the question was, could you reach out to Netanyahu and say, hey, can you pause things for a minute so we can get these Americans out? That was his answer to that. He's like, we can't expect them, after what happened, to pause anything, even to save Americans. That's basically
CJ, I'm sorry to interrupt, but doesn't that prove Max?
No, go ahead.
Doesn't that prove Max's point when he was talking to Tim Pool? Remember when Max was playing the concept how Israel actually kill hostages, and he had this policy where, if you're a hostage, don't expect them to save us, right? So Antony Blinken is running cover for that policy here. Well, you got to expect Israel going to behave like any other country should, right? No, that's him providing cover for the Israeli policy that Max Blumenthal is playing to Tim Pool and his dumb fans that, hey, Israel don't care about civilians. They don't care about hostages. They will kill them. So the reporter asked him, like, are you going to do anything to stop this brutal policy from Israel? Well, she didn't say it like that, but you got to get it. And he doesn't answer the question. That's a brilliant take, CJ, but let's continue.
Let's talk about how they do it. You're right to lay out just how absolutely horrific that attack was 2 weeks ago. Turning the page to what has happened during the following 2 weeks, UNICEF says 1,524 children have been killed in the Gaza Strip.
Now, he just laid out a reason why we all should be upset about these horrific humanitarian crisis that's going on with the deaths of the settlers. She just broke down kids' death, Nick. He obviously, Nick, the State Department of the United States of America, and Antony Blinken, they obviously going to have the same tone and tenor about some kids, right? Let's see if they have the same tone and tenor.
Yeah.
During these bombings, why isn't the U.S. calling for at least a temporary ceasefire?
First, Margaret, when I hear the stories, when I see the pictures,
not even trying,
young children who have lost their lives in this conflict of Hamas is making, whoever they are, wherever they are, whether they're Palestinians, whether they're Israelis, whether they're Jews or Muslims, it hits me, and I know it hits virtually everyone right in the heart. And that's why it's so important.
He's like an AI going right in the heart, like a robot saying it and shit. But you notice whenever we're talking about Israeli deaths, we can talk about only Israeli deaths.
Yeah.
But when you bring up Palestinian deaths, we can only give credit or credibility to the fact that they're dying if we also at the other time say, everybody, I don't like nobody dying. That's the only context that's acceptable to even acknowledge anything about Palestinians.
CJ, you
That's
guys,
pretty disgusting.
do you guys know how disgusting these people are? Weaponized hypocrisy, as I said, is the highest form of corruption, right? So when Israel brutally bombs and invades Gaza and Hamas and commits unspeakable atrocities to those people, that's the fault of Hamas for merely existing and resisting their occupation, right? But then when Russia goes into Ukraine and then Ukraine kills tons of civilians, they say, well, it's not Ukraine's fault that they kill civilians, it's Russia's fault. You guys notice how it's always the fault of the enemy of the United States, no matter what the context of the conflict is? Israel launched a brutal invasion, bombed hospitals and kids, but it's not Israel's fault. It's Hamas's fault. It's Palestinians' fault, right? Then Ukraine killed their own citizens, but that's Russia's fault. You guys see how self-serving this is? Go ahead, CJ.
Spot on, Nick. Let's go.
To do everything possible to protect them, and why it's so important to do everything possible to get assistance to those who need it.
So
Food,
why not
medicine,
ask for
water.
at least a temporary pause in the bombing, as was proposed at the UN this week?
We've seen, first of all, that in order to get assistance in, we've had that happen. And you saw the first 20 trucks go in yesterday. I expect more will follow today. And
this is classic white supremacy power structure. They do something really bad and it's the Band-Aid is never enough. 20 trucks when you need something like 2,000 trucks, what does that do?
Yeah, and the answer is absurd because as we covered before, the United States was the lone dissent for having humanitarian pauses for more supplies to get in. So then I was like, what? Anthony Blinken then responds like, if you look at the situation, we actually do have humanitarian supplies going in, despite the fact that we voted for pauses. That is not because of you. That's because of the rest of the international community and humanitarian workers. How are you going to take credit for supplies getting in when you're the country that try to block humanitarian pauses? When you're the country that keep blocking the ceasefire? So his answer, not only does he dodge the question, it inherently doesn't make any sense for him to reply the way that he did. Why are you blocking pauses on humanitarian aid? Well, if you look at it, humanitarian aid is getting in. But not because of you, though. The hell? Go ahead, CJ.
Now, and this is something I was thinking about earlier, and I'll bring it up now, humanitarian aid. When you think humanitarian aid, you're thinking some natural disaster. It is so bizarre to be talking about we're having a humanitarian crisis in Gaza as if we have no control to stop the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's what's different. It's like we sending supplies. Why don't we turn on the electricity and give them food? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's like it's a given that this is going to be a humanitarian crisis is what I'm getting at. It's a given. It's like, it's not a given. Israel can just not be doing this. And that's never the framing of it. And I just wanted to make that point. Let's finish out a little more of this segment. Oops, I hit the wrong play button. 1 second. Down here.
The day after that, we want to make sure that we have sustained delivery of food, medicine, water, the things that people need. At the same time, I said something a minute ago that we have to remember. Israel has to do everything it can to make sure this doesn't happen again. Freezing things in place where they are now would allow Hamas to remain where it is and to repeat what it's done sometime in the future.
That's the same thing they say about Ukraine and Russia. They don't even change the playbook. So his justification for not supporting a ceasefire, he said, well, if we don't support a ceasefire, that means Hamas essentially solidified their areas. Now, that's the same excuse they use for not calling for peace in Russia and Ukraine. They said, well, we have peace in Russia and Ukraine. That means essentially solidify all Russia's gains, right? And whether Ukraine goes on offensive and Ukraine gain territory, They say, well, we can't have a ceasefire now because if you have a ceasefire now, you just destroy Ukrainian momentum. They gain in land. And then when Russia take land back, when they go on offense, so they say, well, we can't have peace now because Russia just took land. You got to see how their narrative always served war. Always. No matter what happened. If Israel came in there and hypothetically demolished Hamas, they would say, well, we can't have a ceasefire. The job is almost done. We can't stop them now, CJ. Hamas is almost dead. We can't. If they was doing worse, they would say, well, we can't stop now. We didn't make enough gains into Gaza. Like, you guys see how it always serves
it's always
war,
yeah.
no matter what. Go ahead, CJ.
Great point.
Israel has to do everything it can to make sure this doesn't happen again. Freezing things in place where they are now would allow Hamas to remain where it is and to repeat what it's done sometime in the future. No.
You see how he kind of conflates things. He's saying if we do something temporarily, this is going to have them do something in the future. So you're saying freezing something for a week. How does that mean they're going to do something? So you're saying in a week they're going to prepare this grand scheme that's going to be able to do all this stuff. It's what they do always with the enemy, the adversary, Nick. And you say this all the time about Russia. At one time they're weak, and at one time they're strong. At the same time, we've depleted their military by 50%, but at the same time they can take over Europe. It's the same thing. You get what I'm saying? That's that, and it's the selling point of they're weak and they're strong at the same time. That's the point. Let's listen a little more, then we'll close in a second here.
Yeah,
country could accept that.
One of my colleagues who is on the ground in Israel and has traveled to the West Bank conducted an interview with Mr. Mustafa Barghouti, a Palestinian politician I'm sure you know. He said he doesn't understand why President Biden, when he was in Israel, did not say enough is enough. You wanted to respond and you responded. You killed 4,000 Palestinians. Stop. Instead, you're encouraging a ground invasion.
Are you surprised that
yeah,
I was just about to say, are you surprised by that question?
Good for her. For that one question, good for her, dude. That's shocking to hear her to push back on that. We do many propaganda before, and that is very, very rare that we praise someone for one of these motherfuckers. That's a rare good pushback.
She's usually on the other end of us saying, "Oh, that was terrible," but this is a good question. So I thought that was shocking. I was like, "Wow, I cannot believe she asked that." And let's listen to his answer. We're gonna play it again, though.
No country could accept that.
One of my colleagues who is on the ground in Israel and has traveled to the West Bank conducted an interview with Mr. Mustafa Barghouti, a Palestinian politician I'm sure you know. He said he doesn't understand why President Biden, when he was in Israel, did not say enough is enough. You wanted to respond and you responded. You killed 4,000 Palestinians. Stop. Instead, you're encouraging a ground invasion. How do you respond to enough is enough?
Enough is enough should have been the case with.
That sounds so sinister to me. When he said enough is enough. He had one of them. Like, you think we're about to go into mob? Like, that's almost scary to me. I'm gonna rewind it just 1 second to see if it plays that one more time right there. All right, let's listen.
Ground invasion. How do you respond to enough is enough?
Enough is enough should have been the case with Hamas 2 weeks ago. It would be good to hear the entire world speaking clearly and with one voice about the actions that Hamas took, about the
Nick, 4,000 people.
This guy's a joker, bro.
You know how much of a psychopath you are? You didn't even say, he didn't even preface it. You could have said all this unhinged stuff right here. You could have said any precious life lost, that innocent civilians of those 4,000 we do. You could have pretended. You get what I'm saying? Didn't even acknowledge it. He's like, fuck, it's basically saying fuck them 4,000 people, which is a lot of them is like a lot of them are kids, if not 50%, because that area is like 50% under 18.
Like, fam, do you guys think real life is like a comic book? You guys realize that Joker isn't a clown that goes around terrorizing people. You know what I mean? Two-Face isn't a mobster who had one half of his body burned off. It's him. Unlike comics and cartoons and movies, they're not ridiculous, outlandish villains who do long monologues, right? They put a suit on and they work for the state. Anyone believes that Donald Trump is somehow worse than this guy? That's why I had a hard divorce with the burning progressive left, because this guy was the foreign policy advisor to Joe Biden, which essentially means historically he got a guaranteed job in administration. When he was announced as Secretary of State, literally no one was surprised because of how it works. You got a foreign policy advisor, whether he's Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, he pretty much always guaranteed the job, right? So this motherfucker was lurking on Biden's campaign, and you have progressives saying that he was the lesser of two evil. Meanwhile, I'm telling them, looking right at Antony Blinken, like, bro, do you understand what kind of psychopath you're giving power by voting for Joe Biden? This is the deep state. It's not the dumbed down version that MAGA created where people are just after Trump. The deep state are these unelected swamp monsters that attach themselves to politicians, unelected bureaucrats who are going nowhere. This guy has been making very impactful decisions in our government since Iraq, at least, to my knowledge, because he was part of the Biden Security Council and helped Joe Biden manufacture consent for Iraq. Who elected Antony Blinken? How many votes did he get? This deep state are people like Blinken, Lloyd Austin, and these motherfuckers who, if Joe Biden loses the election tomorrow, this motherfucker getting a job somewhere in government. You know what I mean? Somewhere lobbying government.
He'll go be a consultant and consulting foreign countries, stuff like that.
Yeah, but my point is, like, the whenever I watch these like movies, like, I enjoy them. Like I told you, I kind of nerdy at heart too. I enjoy some movies. There's sometimes I watch the writing. I'm like, all right, you guys are writing unrealistic villains here. Like that's kind of usually my general complaint with like Marvel movies and those kind of movies. Like, all right, your villains, they don't seem realistic. You know what I mean? They seem very cartoony. They're I want to destroy the world. Why? Then what? What's the objective at that? You guys see what real evil is? They don't have cartoony motivations like you see in comics and other things. A lot of them, one thing I do enjoy, I'm not being older now, I enjoy a lot of that stuff, right? But you guys see how the real life Joker is the guy who worked at the State Department. That's how I want you guys to think about it, because that's how I do. But go ahead, CJ, I'll pass to you.
Should have been the case with Hamas 2 weeks ago. It would be good to hear the entire world speaking clearly and with one voice about the actions that Hamas took, about the slaughter of people, about the fact that that should be absolutely intolerable, unacceptable to anyone, anywhere, any country, any people. Second,
in terms of U.S. interests in the region, one of America's closest allies, the King of Jordan,
you notice she didn't push back on that shit
Palestinian
at all.
lives seem to matter less than Israeli ones. Our lives matter less than.
Wow, this is another good question right here.
Yeah, go back a little bit.
Yeah, let me go back a little bit here. Listen to this. Oops, this pop-up screen. All right, listen here.
And with one voice about the actions that Hamas took, about the slaughter of people, about the fact that that should be absolutely intolerable, unacceptable to anyone, anywhere, any country, any people. Second,
in terms of U.S. interests in the region, one of America's closest allies, the King of Jordan, gave an impassioned speech saying Palestinian lives seem to matter less than Israeli ones. Our lives matter less than other lives. The application of international law is optional, and human rights appear to have boundaries based on races and religions. That's a warning from one of America's closest friends in the region that this is a dangerous message to be sending, and it could have blowback. Are you?
That's a pretty good question too. Because why these questions? Because we've never seen the state have to be forced to answer questions about why aren't you being more sympathetic to Palestinian deaths. And this is not exactly the right person to be delivering the message that we don't care about them. Like, he's already robotic. He's already seems heartless. You get what I'm saying? He doesn't seem like the right person to deliver a message like this.
Do you remember Joe Biden's unhinged speech last week where he essentially declared never-ending war to the American people? In that same speech, he said that the United States is uniting the world to stand against democracy. Joe Biden uniting the world as he has close allies condemning him. Saudi Arabia getting closer to China and Russia. Remember the same thing they said about Donald Trump? He was so crazy he was going to alienate and destroy the United States standing in the world. With something, once again, from my position, I don't really give a fuck about that, right? But from their position, they said Trump was going to do that. That's exactly what Joe Biden did. They went too hard. Obviously, the satellites like France and Germany and Japan, they're going to be loyal to the death. But a lot of these other motherfuckers, they're like, no, I don't know about this, man. That's what we're hearing about Turkey. So I'm interested in seeing his response to that. Once again, brilliant question. I saw a comment earlier said that she probably going to get disappeared after this interview. I didn't put it up on the screen, but I saw it. But there's going to be blowback. Yeah.
She looked fearful before she asked the question. She did have a look of fear in her eyes. So I'm gonna rewind it to the beginning of the question and kind of see. She kind of takes a deep breath.
The slaughter of people, about the fact that should be absolutely intolerable, unacceptable to anyone, anywhere, any country, any people. Second,
in terms of U.S. interests in the region, one of America's closest allies, the King of Jordan, gave an impassioned speech saying Palestinian lives seem to matter less than Israeli ones. Our lives matter less than other lives. The application of international law is optional, and human rights appear to have boundaries based on races and religions. That's a warning from one of America's closest friends in the region that this is a dangerous message to be sending, and it could have blowback. Are you concerned?
Margaret, every life, Palestinian, Israeli, Jewish, Muslim, Arab, every life has equal worth. When I see the reports, when I see the photographs, when I hear the stories of young children, Palestinian children, who've been killed or injured, it hits me right in the gut too, just as it does when I see these other stories, wherever it is. We had here in our own country a little boy, 6 years old, Wadi, in Chicago, who was viciously murdered, apparently because he was a Palestinian American.
It's apparently because he's a Palestinian, but everything else is because they're Jewish. You notice the framing, the language is very important for people to understand. These words are not happenstance. These are selected words so that you understand the boundaries of the conversation, the listener. So let's continue listening a little more.
A little boy, 6 years old, didn't do anything to anyone.
He's not the right messenger
that
for this.
Strongly across the board, no matter where it is. But this is on Hamas. And the fact is, Hamas doesn't represent the Palestinian people. It doesn't represent their just cause. It doesn't represent their aspiration, and a legitimate aspiration for a state of their own. On the contrary, it does everything to make life worse and more miserable.
Does the U.S. assess that it is actually
people.
possible for Israel to destroy both Hamas as an entity and its ideology? Is it actually a military possibility?
The best way, the only way to defeat an ideology, no matter how warped, and in the case of Hamas, it's about as warped as it possibly can be, is to make sure that there is a better, a clearer alternative for people. And that alternative is very clear, and it's very stark. We have, on the one hand, countries throughout the region who want to come together, to integrate, to normalize relations, and to lift up the rights of the Palestinian people, to be able to have a future where they work together, go to school together, do business together, travel to each other's countries. That's one vision.
Yes.
The other vision is the vision that Hamas has: death, destruction, nihilism, darkness. Now, the responsibility that those of us who believe in the first vision have is to do everything possible to make it real, so that people not only see it, but they can achieve it.
The words dark, nihilism, it was nothing concrete. It was all these like adjectives that really doesn't tell you much. It's like you're describing a villain on TV instead of telling me. Like, that was weird. A weird sort of combination. Let's let him finish the point. We'll close this one here because it's going to end in like 2 minutes, but we can close it before
That's
that.
exactly what we were working on before this horrific attack on October 7th. And that's the vision that we need to get back to.
Okay.
But at the same time, we also have to deal with the fact that Hamas represents an active, ongoing threat, and that has to be dealt with too.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, so it turns out that was it. Any final words to kind of wrap up this? Are you surprised by any of the things he said? Anything? I know you're surprised by the questions because there were some damn good questions she had there.
Yeah, our friend Zoya loves Zoya's life. She brings up a good point. I acknowledge as well that this interview was given the illusion of being tough because Israel and the United States is going through a PR crisis. So she gives them the quote unquote tough questions to give the Biden administration the opportunity to spread their propaganda. So I do think that I didn't consider that at first, but I do think that's a good point about Zoya. So yeah, she asked them tough questions, but those are questions the Biden administration want to be able to spread their propaganda about unchecked. You know what I mean? So that is a great point by Zoya, and I do lean more towards that. And if that is not the case, you're gonna see her quickly gone. Because Blinken, as you guys see, was obviously prepared to do an acting performance. So it is possible that they knew that these hard questions were coming. There's no way he's going to agree otherwise. So I think that's a great take by Zoe, and I actually agree with that.